Middle East conflict, aftermath of U.S. Israeli strikes on Iranian targets. The night sky above Tehran glowed an eerie orange as explosions echoed through the capital. Windows rattled across neighborhoods, and the distant roar of fighter jets shattered the silence that had once defined the city's late hours. Within minutes, social media was flooded with videos showing plumes of smoke rising above military compounds, highways clogged with traffic, and frightened residents gathering in basements and underground shelters. It was the beginning of one of the most dramatic escalations in the Middle East in years, in a coordinated military campaign launched on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel carried out large-scale strikes on Iranian military infrastructure, targeting nuclear facilities, missile bases, and high-ranking military officials. For many across the region, the attacks marked not just another confrontation, but the opening chapter of a conflict that could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. A night of fire. Residents of Tehran described the opening moments of the attack as overwhelming and surreal. One witness told reporters that the explosions came in waves. First there was the sound of aircraft overhead, then the thunderous blast of missiles striking targets across the city. Military installations, intelligence headquarters, and strategic defense systems were among the sites hit. According to military analysts, the strikes were designed to cripple Iran's military leadership and disrupt its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The Pentagon said the campaign was intended to eliminate what it called a growing security threat posed by Iran's weapons development. The scale of the operation was immense. Multiple waves of airstrikes hit targets across the country, from Tehran in the north to military facilities in western and southern regions. Iranian air defenses attempted to intercept incoming missiles, but the intensity of the bombardment overwhelmed many systems. As dawn broke, the damage began to emerge. The human cost. While military installations were the primary targets, civilians soon found themselves caught in the devastation. Hospitals reported hundreds of injured people arriving within hours of the strikes. Many suffered burns, shrapnel wounds, and injuries from collapsing buildings. Ambulances rushed through debris-covered streets as emergency workers tried to rescue survivors trapped beneath rubble. Iranian authorities said hundreds of people were killed in the early days of the attacks, with thousands more wounded. Entire neighborhoods near military facilities experienced extensive destruction. One of the most controversial incidents occurred in the southern city of Minab, where a powerful explosion destroyed a school building during class hours. Satellite analysis later suggested the blast was caused by an airstrike that also hit a nearby military compound. The tragedy sparked international outrage. Images of damaged classrooms and abandoned school bags circulated around the world, prompting calls for investigations into whether civilian sites had been mistakenly targeted. Human rights groups warned that the attack raised serious concerns about the protection of civilians during military operations. Military objectives. From the perspective of the United States and Israel, the campaign was aimed at weakening Iran's strategic capabilities. Officials said the strikes focused on nuclear research and enrichment facilities, ballistic missile launch systems, military command centers, leadership compounds, air defense installations. These targets were chosen to reduce Iran's ability to develop advanced weapons and to limit its capacity to launch attacks against neighboring countries. Some Iranian military commanders and government figures were reportedly killed in the initial wave of strikes, further destabilizing the country's leadership structure. Israeli military officials later said that several strategic defense systems were destroyed, opening the way for additional strikes in subsequent days. Iran's response. Iran's reaction was swift and forceful. Within hours of the attacks, the Iranian government condemned the strikes as an act of aggression and vowed retaliation. State media broadcast footage of missile launches and military mobilization across the country. Ballistic missiles and drones were launched toward Israeli territory and toward Gulf countries hosting American military bases. Air defense systems across the region were activated as neighboring countries scrambled to intercept incoming projectiles. The confrontation quickly expanded beyond Iran's borders. In several Gulf states, explosions were heard near military facilities. Authorities confirmed that air defenses had intercepted missiles targeting strategic installations. The escalation heightened fears that the conflict could spread into a wider regional war. Regional shockwaves. The Middle East has long been a region of complex alliances and rivalries, and the strikes sent shockwaves through multiple countries. Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria, where Iranian-backed groups maintain strong influence, became potential flashpoints. Armed factions aligned with Iran warned they could join the fight if attacks continued. Meanwhile, oil markets reacted immediately. Shipping companies began reassessing routes through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global energy corridor. Even the possibility of disruption to the strait caused global oil prices to surge. For countries heavily dependent on Middle Eastern energy exports, the stakes were enormous. Diplomatic reactions. International reactions to the strikes were mixed. Several Western governments expressed support for Israel's right to defend itself but urged caution to prevent further escalation. Other countries strongly criticized the operation, arguing that it risked destabilizing the entire region. The United Nations called for an immediate de-escalation and urged all parties to return to diplomatic negotiations. Humanitarian organizations also warned that prolonged fighting could create a severe humanitarian crisis. Millions of civilians live near military and industrial areas across Iran, raising concerns about potential displacement and shortages of essential supplies. Life under uncertainty. For ordinary Iranians, the strikes transformed daily life overnight. Schools closed in many cities, flights were cancelled as airspace restrictions spread across the region. Long lines formed at gas stations and supermarkets as people rushed to stock up on food and fuel. Families gathered around televisions and radios, waiting for updates on the evolving situation. Some residents chose to leave major cities temporarily, traveling to rural areas to avoid further attacks. Others remained, hoping the conflict would not escalate further. Across social media, messages from Iranian citizens revealed a mixture of fear, anger, and exhaustion. Many said they were worried about what the coming days might bring. The risk of a wider war. Military analysts warned that the conflict could still expand dramatically. If regional allies become directly involved, the situation could evolve into a multi-front confrontation stretching from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. Such a scenario would have serious global consequences. Major shipping routes could be disrupted, energy supplies might become unstable, and diplomatic relations between global powers could deteriorate further. History shows that conflicts in the Middle East often have ripple effects far beyond the region itself. A fragile moment. As the dust settles over damaged buildings and cratered military bases, the world watches closely. The aftermath of the strikes has left Iran wounded but defiant, while Israel and the United States remain prepared for further confrontation. For now, uncertainty dominates the region.